In 1881, in Boston, Massachusetts, the promise of a bright future seemed to be in the air. At long last, the terrible financial depression from the Panic of 1873 was ending. Boston had come alive with a wave of new industrial and economic growth. A few miles west of Copley Square, in the village of Newton, home to the largest community of Irish immigrants in the entire United States, things were also looking brighter. On May 18, 1881, the congregation of Our Lady Help of Christians Catholic Church welcomed a new member into its fold with the baptism of 4-day-old William Dalton. The baby's father, Michael Dalton, was the town barber and a devout Catholic. His wife, Julia, was the daughter of a well-to-do factory owner and a skeptical Presbyterian. From the start, baby Billy was the apple of his mother's eye. As a toddler, he and Julia would ride the train into Boston to enter him in one of the many baby shows. Invented by none other than master showman P.T. Barnum, they were the latest rage in popular entertainment. To his mother's sheer delight, her remarkably beautiful child won more than his share of blue ribbons. But Julia's happiness with her and Billy's life in Newton was to be short-lived. Michael Dalton was restless and unhappy, feeling anchored to his dead-end job cutting hair at the barber shop. He yearned for more than their life in the boarding house on a back street. He devoured newspaper accounts of the mining fortunes being made out west, which preoccupied his thoughts and eventually overtook his reason. In 1885, Michael uprooted Julia and Billy, and the three set out for the Silver Strike in Calico, California. He spent the next 3 years prospecting, but time and again, his dreams of striking it rich never panned out. By 1888, the Daltons settled in Butte, Montana, where Michael once again set up shop as a barber. Known as the richest hill on earth, home of the Anaconda Mine, Butte had grown from a tiny boom town into the largest city between San Francisco and the Mississippi. There were 8 theaters, 3 railroad stations, a notorious red light district known as Venus Alley, and 100 saloons. The atmosphere of Butte no doubt contributed to Michael Dalton's descent into alcoholism. He soon spent most of his nights in a drunken stupor. Julia enrolled Billy in Butte's Lincoln School, where he took a keen interest in amateur dramatics. He soon became fast friends with his classmate, Will Eltinge, who shared his love of the theater. Will's father, Charles, was correspondence clerk to Copper King and future U.S. Senator William A. Clark. Billy and Will lived across the street from each other and just around the corner from Mr. Clark's opulent mansion on Granite Street. The two friends grew to feel despondent and a bit ashamed of their modest lots in life, but there was one great escape in Butte open to them. Ever since the Great Northern Railway had reached Butte a year before the Daltons, it had become a major stop on the national vaudeville circuit. As often as they could, Billy and Will would meet the arriving trains to welcome the performers and escort them to their hotels, enchanted by their glamour and gaiety. To help support her family, Julia Dalton worked sewing costumes for the entertainers. Billy often delivered them to the stage door. The chorus girls were smitten by Billy's good looks and perfect manners. Legend has it that one night they dressed him in costume and put him into their dance line. He was so convincing that no one in the audience guessed his gender. When Michael Dalton found out He was furious and truly worried that his son might soon be lured into a sordid, disreputable life in vaudeville. Only the circus was held in lower public regard. In 1895, under his orders, Julia and 14-year-old Billy boarded a train back to Boston, where he would begin his working life as a dry goods clerk, earning $3.50 a week. Thanks to his quick mind and industriousness, Bill soon became expert at his occupation. Within months, he secured a position as a bank clerk and joined the Boston Bank Officers Association. One of the Bankers Association's civic activities was the production of amateur dramatical events. Proceeds were contributed to deserving charities and public works projects. In the Ivy League tradition of Harvard University's Hasty Pudding Club, all the female roles were played by the men of the association. Bill Dalton was thrilled to be invited to join and began to rehearse with them at the studio of renowned dance instructor Lila Viles Wyman, above the Tremont Theater on Boston Common. Mrs. Wyman was deeply impressed by his natural talent, keenness to learn, and uncanny ability to assume a feminine manner and grace. She recommended that he take the lead role in the banker's next production. William Julian Dalton was the smash hit of the show and received a glowing review in the Boston Globe. He decided then to change his stage name to Julian Eltinge in honor of his friend in Butte. The show's writer and producer was Robert A. Barnett, a wealthy sugar merchant and father of three, with genuine passion and talent for the stage. His lavish, light operatic spectacles, all charity events, had gained him national fame as the Extravaganza King. Barnett also wrote and produced shows for the Bankers Association's friendly rival, the First Corps of Cadets of Boston. Founded in 1741, it was the oldest military unit in continuous existence in the United States. The cadets were all sons of the Brahmins of Beacon Hill, the jeunesse dorée of America's 400 families. Most were Harvard graduates and former members of the Hasty Pudding Club. Since 1891, Barnett had worked with the cadets to raise funds for their new armory on Park Plaza, built as protection for the hub of Boston against feared immigrant uprisings. In 1900, Barnett invited Eltinge to play Mignonette, a spy of Cardinal Richelieu, in that year's cadet show, Milady and the Musketeer. The production earned an impressive $25,000 for the construction of the armory, and Billy Eltinge was its smash sensation. As with many other Barnett originals, the show went on to lucrative commercial runs in Boston, Chicago, and New York under producer E. Rice. Thrilled by the cadets' success, the Boston Bankers Association immediately looked to Barnett for an even bigger show and to Eltinge as its leading lady. The result was Miss Simplicity. Booked for a full week at the Tremont Theater in February 1901, it earned $10,000, the banker's best success ever. Lauded as the funniest little comedy in the world by the Chicago Times, Eltinge stole the show as Claire de Loinville, an ingenue who doesn't want to become queen, changes places with a beggar girl, and appears in one breathtaking costume after another. 2 years later, in 1903, Barnett and the Bankers premiered their next extravaganza, Baron Humbug, an enormous production with military marches, ballets, and songs. As Countess Sylvia, a Hungarian belle, Eltinge was dazzling in 3 spectacular costumes that Barnett had designed exclusively for him, and his rendition of his title song, Sylvia, brought waves of applause. The Boston Globe called him the bright particular star of the show, his female impersonation in the role of Countess Sylvia a triumph of the art of imitation. Not long after, E. E. Rice offered Eltinge a professional contract to perform in Mr. Wickes of Wickham, an adaptation of a British smash hit. Many songs for the American version were co-written by 19-year-old Jerome Kern, his first in any show. Based on the famous 1892 play Charley's Aunt, Eltinge played John Smith, a young man forced by circumstances beyond his control to disguise himself as a woman in order to help his friends.
Almost any cross-dressing play you can think of involves this element of compulsion. Charley's Aunt, the most perennial of these comedies, Lord Fancourt Beverley has to do this because his two college chums are forcing him to play Charley's Aunt. He does not want to do it. Throughout the play, you see him smoking cigars, putting his feet up on the table, even though he's wearing a dress, to show that he is not wholly turned into a woman, that there's a kind of protest going on. Or the other way, male to female, when you get your Rosalines in As You Like It, or Violas in Twelfth Night, they're dressing up as boys because they have to. The plot is putting them in a situation where, for the sake of survival, they have to change sex. But they don't really want to do it.
Charley's Aunt became a staple routine of American comedy, later employed in such films as Some Like It Hot and Tootsie, as well as television series like Bosom Buddies. Mr. Wickes opened in New York City at the Bijou Theater, a block south of Herald Square, on September 19, 1904. Although not a tremendous financial success, Eltinge was hailed by the press for his performance. Many show producers and songwriters were equally impressed, and his arrival in New York City could not have been better timed. 1904 has been called the year that Broadway was born. Longacre Square was renamed Times Square after the New York Times completed its new office tower on 42nd Street. The IRT Times Square subway station opened, bringing rapid transit and access to the new theater district that had migrated up Broadway from Herald Square. George M. Cohan made his solo Broadway debut as star and composer of Little Johnny Jones, which included Give My Regards to Broadway. A great transition was taking place. Operetta, in the tradition of Gilbert and Sullivan, was fusing with vaudeville and burlesque to give birth to a new, all-American dramatic art form, the musical comedy. Eltinge was flooded with offers from vaudeville producers to perform for them. Over the next 2 years, he became a regularly featured attraction in New York City's top theaters. During this time, he became lifelong friends with George M. Cohan, who had just become a Freemason and whose lodge he would join 6 years later. Fellow members of Pacific Lodge No. 233 were none other than Joseph Schenck, founder of United Artists and 20th Century Fox Pictures, Carl Laemmle, founder of Universal Pictures, and Harry Cohen, founder of Columbia Pictures. All were starting their careers in New York City then, building and managing amusement parks, penny arcades, and Nickelodeon parlors, as well as the first movie theaters. The most important and powerful theater owner then was B.F. Keith, the father of American vaudeville. His nationwide chain of fireproof palaces set the standard for both luxury and safety. Keith established the first fixed policy of cleanliness and order in show business for his theaters, and forbade vulgarity or coarseness in his acts under fine of instant discharge. As an added measure, with attendant publicity, he even invited a Sunday school dignitary to judge propriety at rehearsals as an appeal to the support of women and children. Keith thought so highly of Eltinge that he advised his close associate, Martin Beck, owner of the Orpheum Theater chain and builder of the Palace in Times Square 8 years later, to sign him to his road company for a complete circuit tour. Upon his return, Eltinge appeared at Keith's Union Square Theater on New Year's Day, 1906. The advertisement appeared on the back page of the very first issue of Variety. 20 years later, the Keith and Orpheum Theater chains would merge with Joseph P. Kennedy's FBO Film Company under the aegis of David Sarnoff and RCA to form RKO and Radio Pictures. In 1907, Eltinge set off on a four-capital tour of Europe: Vienna, Berlin, Paris, and London, and gave a command performance for King Edward VII at Windsor Castle. His Majesty enjoyed the performance so much that the following day he presented Eltinge with a rare white bulldog as a symbol of his appreciation. Returning to New York that September, Eltinge made his solo debut at B.F. Keith's Alhambra Theater to critical acclaim. Variety, founded by Symee Silverman just 2 years before, but already the Bible of show business, said of him, "Eltinge has played about New York, both in productions and vaudeville before, but with his odd gift of female mimicry now developed, he makes a new bid for metropolitan attention." The audience was completely deceived as to his sex until he removed his wig after the second song. Eltinge will be liked. He is artistic in everything he does, and his act is far and away above what is described as female impersonation. In 1908, Eltinge joined the Cohan and Harris Honey Boy Minstrels at the New York Theater in The Belle of the Barber's Ball. He soon became one of their most popular stars. Newspapers called him the most fascinating woman on the American stage. One reviewer declared, "Just as a white man makes the best stage Negro, so in this case, a man gives a more photographic interpretation of femininity than the average woman is able to give." By 1910, Eltinge had reached the pinnacle of vaudeville, as big a star as funny girl Fanny Brice, George Jessel, or Sophie Tucker. The William Morris Agency offered him an unprecedented $3,000 per week, more than $40,000 today, to sign with them and continue touring. At the same moment, he was approached by legendary Broadway producer Al H. Woods, the model for Mel Brooks's Max Bialystock. A one-man force of nature who lived on coffee and cigars, Woods had 15 shows running at once. He offered Eltinge his own corporation with $10,000 capital plus $1,750 per week. The deal made Eltinge the highest-paid male actor in the world.